about. And with that, so it looks like we have a few minutes until this press conference begins. We're going to bring in Evan Siegfried, Republican strategist and author of GOP GPS. Evan, good to hear from you. From a political standpoint, for a president who had, shall we say, a rough past 10 days, you can't beat these pictures. You can't beat this conversation that's happening.
This is actually very good for the president after what has happened over the past 2 weeks. He's able to show that he's going out and focusing on the job he was elected to do, not what people are talking about back here as to whether or not it's some giant scandal or not. What he's doing is going and doing the people's business on foreign policy by working with the Saudis. He's going to end up working with the Israelis, and he's going to talk with NATO, the G7, and the Pope. And what we can see already coming out of this deal with the Saudis is not only a more secure world and the potential for that, but even an economic benefit for the United States and American workers, because the Saudis are coming to us with a position of need where they're asking for things from us, and those things could be infrastructure investment, which could help us by selling materials and creating jobs for Americans, and also benefit the Saudi Arabian people.
The president has such a big speech tomorrow. There's been, and we heard from our own John Roberts, there's a lot of emphasis, a lot of curiosity in exactly how he's going to be mincing words. How important is it for the president to tread lightly and to deliver really probably a perfect speech? I mean, the world is watching.
Let's not kid ourselves here. The president has a very fine needle to thread here. He needs to be both tough but at the same time welcoming and show that he is a friend of the Saudi Arabian people. Yes, the Saudis do not treat women as equals like we do here in the United States. Women are not allowed to drive. They still have to get permission from their husbands to do several things. They have to have their heads covered, etc. And the president, it looks like, is going to be saying that he wants to find areas of mutual cooperation without trying to lecture them on how to begin or how to live their lives. And that's good, but at the same time, there are going to be people in the United States on both the Republican and Democratic side who say, why aren't you standing up for women's rights? Because presidents, be they Democrat or Republican, have traditionally done that. So the president is going to have to find a way to keep both Saudis and the Muslim world happy, as well as keep American critics happy. And that is a very fine needle to thread.
You know, Evan, you used the exact same word that Judy Miller used, I should say phrase that she used, a lot of needles to thread with this speech. And any speech begins with a simple question: who's the audience for this? Is it the American people? Is it his supporters who he was so tough about taking on terrorism and calling it radical Islamic terrorism, something that he over and over said was so important? Or is his audience the Saudi Arabians? Is his audience Iran? You can't speak to everybody. You can't make all the people happy all the time. Who's most important tomorrow?
Well, it's really an audience of the world. The president, what he says is going to be closely watched in Beijing, Pyongyang, here in New York, Washington, D.C., and everywhere else, including Riyadh, because the president has yet to fully outline what is the Trump doctrine, the Trump foreign policy, in a speech. And we got a preview of it with his strike in Syria, which he was very right to do, but we haven't had elaboration. And this is a good opportunity for him to tell the world, not only the citizens of the world, but the leaders of the world, this is how America is going to be going while I'm in charge of it.
I'm also curious because tomorrow is day 2. Obviously, it's a 9-day trip. He's visiting other countries as well. That he also has to set a tone for this trip. And I know, and when we talked to Judy Miller, she said a lot of these countries sort of need to be woven together. They need to work together to build a coalition. Can he accomplish that tomorrow, and how does he set the tone, not only for the global audience that you mentioned, but also for the next few days of this trip?
Well, the first tone he has to establish is American leadership is back. Look what the failure of American leadership brought us over the past 8 years. And that was a disaster in Syria, where President Obama called not striking Syria because of the atrocities they were committing against their own people, a political, or the most politically courageous thing he had done as president. That was political cowardice. Let's not split hairs here. President Trump needs to show the exact polar opposite of political cowardice that President Obama showed, because the destabilization that has gone on in the Middle East can be largely attributed to President Obama and what he has done not only in, or not done, I should say, not only in Syria, but in Libya, in Egypt, in elsewhere. And we have to have President Trump set the course of the ship back toward true north, which is a more stabilized region and thus a more stabilized world.